We kick off the story with a girl showing up at a certain place, mentioning that this spot is the Nagumo Detective Agency. Right after that, we get a flashback of our protag, which basically gives us the lowdown on the guy. His name is Keiichiro Nagumo, and in the past, he was extremely famous. A legend, a machine, a beast in a cage who solved cases not even the cops could touch. On top of his insane potential as an investigator, his charm had all of society in the palm of his hand, from fan clubs to TV interviews. But, unfortunately, as they say, all good things must come to an end. And for our man Nagumo, it was no different. That flashback was actually a dream, cut short by a ringing phone. And yeah, back in his glory days, this dude was an awesome detective, a well-respected name in his field. But nowadays, his struggle is just to scrape together enough cash to pay rent at the end of the month. To make things worse, we can see time hasn't been kind to his body at all. With his youth gone, what's left is a busted-up spine that reminds him every single day that he's become a totally out-of-shape old guy. This time, we see his back was exceptionally cruel, locking up on our protag right when he'd finally landed a gig, something that hadn't come along in a long time. Wincing in pain, he drags himself to the door as if his life depends on it, and that's when she appears, the girl from the start of the episode. She arrived right at the moment the dude was wrecked on the floor, which he says gave him a great view, but it also earned him a baseball bat to the back. And apparently, it actually helped the dude's spine, because he stood right up. Goes to show, some bad things come for a good reason. He asks who the hell she is and what she wants, and she explains she came looking for something specific. But the more she empties her bottomless pockets, the more it seems like she's lost the thing. Until it hits her. The thing was where it always is, on the back of her neck. From there, she pulls out an old flyer Nagumo wrote ages ago when he was desperate to recruit help. Before she can even explain, he cuts her off, saying there's no way he's hiring her. And that, of course, gets the girl pissed, and the first thing that came to my mind with her scream was, "You gotta love the crazy ones." And man, this anime is already looking promising. He tries to justify himself, saying a high school gal can't be a detective. She fires back that she's not a gal, but he points to her makeup, her low-cut shirt, and her short skirt. I mean, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it's probably a duck. However, in her opinion, that's a painfully outdated and kinda gross take, to be honest. And he says he really couldn't care less about being called gross by someone like her. Even though it seems like a lost cause, she insists the case he's getting into seems way too much for a washed-up old man like him to handle alone. At that, Nagumo lights a cigarette, trying to reclaim a shred of his old swagger, and lectures her, saying that being a detective requires patience. No slip-ups. No hesitation. No delusions. It's a job for capable people, not for a gal like her. And as he's looking her up and down, she nearly impales him with a spear. That's when she explains, despite her looks, she practices a style of karate called ryukyu. Curious, Nagumo asks why she's so dead set on being a detective's assistant, and she replies it's because she wants to become a real detective someday, a dream she's had since she was a little kid. And her pocket hoarding habit is just one of the many skills she's picked up along the way. As she's telling her story, he tries to make a witty remark, but she just lands a punch, busting the guy's nose without a second thought, and makes it clear, she's just a humble detective in training, and she already knows exactly what he was about to say. After all, she watched every episode of Detective Furuhata Ninja Bureau yesterday. First, she deduces he was going to say he barely has any work and no money to hire help, to which he confirms, putting on a fake tone of surprise. She asks if she passed the audition, but Nagumo just tells her to get lost and find something better to do with her life. The scene then changes, and out on the street, the detective looks at a photo of a woman named Tamira Takako, 27 years old, married to his client for 2 years. About 2 weeks ago, the client began to suspect she was cheating on him during work hours. From the first moment he saw her, Nagumo thought she looked guilty. Still, nothing happened all week. Today, though, instead of heading to her office, she turned the other way and walked into a coffee shop. The next step was obvious: follow her without drawing attention. But this place? It was one of those fancy, flowery cafes, where a rough-looking guy like him would stand out like a sore thumb. So he decided to tail her from outside. However, guess who shows up, folks? Yep, Miss Faith in the Crazy Ones herself, mentioning how cute the cafe is and telling them to go inside already. He wonders what the hell is happening, and she says she gets the situation and has a plan. What if she pretends to be his much younger girlfriend? Then him walking into a frilly cafe like that wouldn't look so suspicious. And even our man Nagumo has to admit, it's not a bad plan. And so, the newly formed couple goes up to the counter. A cheerful barista asks what they'd like. Embarrassed, Nagumo tries to read the menu, but everything's so fancy and over the top, he can't understand half the words. The girl rushes him, so, flustered, he mutters, "Just coffee." Wrong move. According to her, that's literally the most suspicious thing he could have asked for. So she takes charge and orders for both of them, 2 venti hazelnut, vanilla, almond, and caramel frappuccinos, with an extra shot of espresso and whipped cream topped with extra chocolate. Basically, a bottled heart attack in a cup, and probably the doom of our protag's wallet. When the sugar bombs arrive at the table, Nagumo mentally prepares for instant diabetes. But trying to change the subject, he asks if she ever thought of applying to other agencies. She shrugs and says his office is just really close to her house. Lighting another cigarette, Nagumo sighs and reminds her he's just an old guy who's been in this business for 20 years, and it hasn't been easy. She ignores him. Her eyes are fixed on Tamira Takako, and she deduces right away what it's all about. He's trying to catch her cheating. He grunts that she's not wrong about the case, but he needs photos, evidence, proof that she's stepping out on her husband. Ironically, the girl and the detective start arguing out loud about whether he's being too suspicious by the way he's staring at the woman, and they're loud enough to catch Takako's attention. Thinking fast and trying to play it cool, the assistant swoops in with a spoonful of frappuccino and flies it toward Nagumo's mouth like a little airplane, feeding him in the most awkwardly romantic way imaginable. And unbelievably, the plan works. Then the girl casually points out that in the age of smartphones, people are way more aware. Nobody wants to get caught doing something dumb and end up exposed on the internet. At which point Nagumo, in turn, admits he doesn't even know what a smartphone is, and the girl's head nearly explodes at the revelation. And me? I'm just cracking up at how funny this anime is. That's when the girl reveals something surprising. While Nagumo was tailing the woman from the cafe, she was tailing him. And the fact he didn't even notice just proves he's not losing work because he's old, but because he's lost his instincts and his awareness. Hearing this, Nagumo admits that maybe his intuition isn't what it used to be. The problem is he only knows how to do things the old school way. And since that's what made him famous, it's even harder to let go of that method. He asks if she believes he was once famous because of it, and she very seriously says yes. However, at that exact moment, a man in a suit approaches Tamira Takako, and Nagumo recognizes him. It's her boss. He watches them embrace and immediately assumes she's guilty. Because in his view, when it comes to cheating, it's much easier to prove someone's guilty than innocent. After all it takes is one photo of the lovebirds being unfaithful and boom, case closed. As he says this, he pulls a camera from his pocket, making it obvious as hell what he's about to do, which sends his assistant into a total panic. Thinking fast again, she snatches the camera from his hand and takes a selfie with Nagumo as cover, sneakily including Takako and her boss in the background. When the client receives the photo, he's crushed. He sees his wife clinging to another man and walks off looking like the saddest man alive. After he leaves, Nagumo asks when the girl plans to go home. She protests, reminding him how helpful she was during the investigation, only to be discarded like trash. Recognizing her potential, Nagumo says she can visit the agency whenever she wants, but makes no promises about her being his assistant. Seizing the moment, she snatches his coat as payment for her services. Nagumo doesn't seem to mind. He asks what she thought of the investigation, and she casually replies, "It lacked a bit of excitement," the very phrase he used to say in his youth and during his fame. And that disarms him, as he realizes she knew who he was. And before she leaves, he asks for her name. "Mishiro," she says. After their goodbyes, Nagumo heads back to the agency, only to throw out his back again and trip on the first step, face-planting at the entrance. Concerned, Mashiro runs back to help, but also doesn't miss the chance to make fun of the poor guy. The scene changes, and the next day, the dynamic duo is already on another crucial case for the neighborhood, finding a missing cat. Unfortunately, they find the wrong feline, and since you can't just toss a cat out, Mashiro decides to adopt it and names him Cerberus, the new agency mascot. Nagumo, being the buzzkill that he is, points out that Cerberus is a dog in mythology, but Mashiro couldn't care less about such useless details and sticks with the name, welcoming her new pet. The cat immediately sneezes right in her face, and her reaction is not nearly as loving anymore. The confused old lady asks what's going to happen with her case. And well, the scene changes again, and Mashiro proudly shows off a ridiculous poster she made for the agency. Although she swears she has serious artistic talent, Nagumo crumples the monstrosity without a second thought. The poster said they do anything, which, to him, is an insult to the noble profession of a detective. Regardless, Mashiro confesses she's already spread over 500 of those flyers all over town. And before Nagumo can even start yelling about printing costs, Cerberus walks in with a bug in his mouth, causing the detective to flee the scene immediately. Mashiro, ever the opportunist, grabs the bug and chases after her insect-phobic boss just to mess with him. As revenge, Nagumo throws his assistant out the window and orders her to take down every last one of those posters she put up. However, a woman passing by witnesses the chaos and calls the cops. Nagumo, totally terrified, explains that the girl would be fine even if she fell from the 5th floor, and then greets his new client. The woman says she saw the poster claiming Nagumo could do anything, so she came to hire him to deal with a beehive at her house. But Nagumo flatly refuses. After all, with the confidence of a world-class detective, he admits he won't take the case because he's deathly afraid of insects. He thinks about sending Mashiro to handle it, but first, he asks the client how to make a call on a smartphone. When he gets through, Mashiro grumbles that she's still busy tearing down posters, but Nagumo insists it's an emergency pest control job. Realizing this could be her big chance to prove herself, the girl gets pumped, ready for the mission, and rushes to the address. When she arrives, she finds an old building with "Crime Association" written at the entrance. Mashiro starts to suspect the whole beehive story might be a metaphor, and that she's not walking into a nest of insects, but a den of actual criminals. Whatever it is, she's determined to crush it. After all, she's seen too many action movies to chicken out now. This is her time to shine. With a pest extermination guide in hand, Nagumo starts coaching her over the phone. Step 1. Get as close as possible to the hive. Once she finds an entrance and sees how many bees there are, she needs to block it off. That's when Mashiro walks into a room full of sketchy-looking thugs who can't believe their luck, an innocent little girl wandering into their territory out of nowhere. Without missing a beat, Nagumo gives the order, "Time to hit him hard, use the insecticide." At that moment, Mashiro pulls a can of pepper spray from her pocket and sprays it directly into the face of a bald guy in front of her. Next, she dodges a katana swipe, right as Nagumo warns her about the sting she might get. Dudes, this anime is just too good, it's getting hard to narrate without bursting out laughing. Moments later, a thug with a gun opens fire, forcing the intruder to hide behind a desk. As payback, she whips out a flamethrower and torches a few of the gangsters. Their screams make Nagumo realize things have taken a very, very bizarre turn. Left all alone, the last thug starts sweating bullets as he watches the little monster who just wiped out all his buddies. The hunger in her eyes makes him instantly regret ever joining the Yakuza, especially if the only reason was because he liked the fancy suits. But then, Mashiro drops the flamethrower. The guy sees a sliver of hope and lunges at her with a knife. And it's at this moment that Nizutaro, 22 years old, 2 years into his Yakuza career, feels death breathing down his neck for the very first time. With that, he drops to his knees and desperately begs for his life. With the job done, Mashiro calls the boss to give him the good news, at which point he asks what the bees looked like. Glancing at the trembling mess that is Nizu, she casually replies, "Long legs." And that's all Nagumo needs to hear to figure out they were just wasps. Later that day, A TV report at the agency announces that the secret office of the crime association was completely wiped out by an unknown assailant. When Mishiro explains that she was the one behind it, our man Nagumo nearly has a meltdown. But she calmly adds that the mission wasn't all bad, it even brought in some useful results. For example, the one and only Nizutaro, now a former Yakuza member. After being spared by Mishiro, Nizu sees it as a second chance at life and pledges eternal loyalty to Mr. Nagumo's agency. "Well, then," says Nagumo, "go make us some coffee." As he gives the order, the client casually asks if the beehive has been removed from her house yet. And with that, the episode ends, and holy crap, what a trip was that. Did you guys enjoy all this craziness? Want to find out where this agency of nutjobs is headed? We'll find out those answers and more in the next episode. The story kicks off with Nagumo and Mishiro just chilling, watching TV. Suddenly, something terrifying pops up on the screen, and they both start screaming in despair. Mishiro, in a pure state of panic, runs to get salt to purify the place from evil spirits. Nagumo, a bit calmer, advises her not to watch these kinds of shows. But my dudes, it's already too late. The psycho just jumped and chucked the entire bag of salt at the TV, shattering the poor thing. And Nagumo, with all the patience in the world, just comments that it would have been better to throw just the salt, without the bag. We find out that Mishiro is scared to death of dark places and ghosts, which, was kind of obvious, right? She asks Nagumo if he's also scared, and he says no. Surprised, she asks how that's possible, and our protag drops this gem of wisdom. Ghosts don't exist. To him, ghosts and Santa Claus are the same thing, products of kids' imaginations. Hearing this, Mishiro already imagines that if Nagumo dies, he's going to turn into a horrible, trapped spirit on Earth. Just then, the doorbell rings. The girl opens the door and comes face to face with Hayashida, who expresses a certain surprise that she's actually working at a real detective agency. The scene changes, and we see them all sitting down, where our boy Nagumo finds out this guy is Mishiro's classmate. She explains she hasn't seen him in a while. Hayashida, with a sly dig, suggests it's because she doesn't go to class much. She gets all embarrassed and says that at least she's keeping track of her absences. But the vibe got super awkward, and she nervously asks what her horoscope is for today. Our protag immediately realizes they aren't that close. The classmate then says he came to ask for a favor. A ghost keeps appearing near his house. Mishiro stumbles and is already scared out of her wits. He continues, saying that every night at midnight, he feels something outside. He bought a security camera and saw some bizarre static, and suddenly, a ghostly girl appeared. When he went out to check, the camera went static again, and the thing vanished. Nagumo, the skeptic, says this could be a dumb trick or a stalker, and that he and Mishiro will investigate. He looks at Mishiro, who's shaking like a leaf, and the poor girl says she can't take this case. Nagumo then gives her that classic pep talk. Does a detective pick their clients based on their mood? He says there's no problem with taking the easy way out, but if she does, she'll never catch up to him. Mishiro is stunned, while the cat, through the language of cats, mentions that Nagumo actually forced Mishiro to take on this extermination job alone. But regardless, it ended up working, because she gets filled with courage. Hayashida asks if she'll be okay, and she remembers her coach's advice. In a flashback, she asks him how to defeat a ghost. The coach laughs and tells her to hit it in the nose, because any creature's weak point is its nose. And if that doesn't work, aim for the knees. With that in mind, she declares that she's ready. Later, at Hayashida's house, she notices how clean everything is for someone who lives alone. Nagumo asks if the ghost appears when people are around, and Hayashida says no. At that moment, Mishiro looks at the laptop connected to the camera and screams that she saw something. They all rush to see and, well, it was just an old man passing by. Nagumo asks if this old man is known, and Mishiro, in all her innocence, says yes, that he's been showing up a lot lately, and finds it weird that Nagumo, being an old man himself, doesn't know him. Hayashida, confused and scared, yells that the static is back. Suddenly, the ghost of the girl appears on the screen, screaming, and the poor girl's soul almost left her body. I laughed out loud at this, and I honestly feel bad for her underwear right now. She says this is 200 times scarier than she imagined, and our protagonist tells her to go after it, saying the ghost disappears quickly and he needs her speed to figure out what it is. Mishiro, forced and angry, runs out the front door. On the camera, they see the ghost vanishing and Mishiro appearing, while the old man walks past her and hands her food. Hayashida comments that she's eating it, and Nagumo says she shouldn't be accepting food from people like that old man. The next day, same thing. The ghost appears, Nagumo tells her to go, she runs, and the ghost vanishes. By the 5th day, she's getting bolder, jumping to try and catch the specter. On the 7th day, she's even threatening the ghost, saying she'll break its legs so it can't run. I mean, it's all about adaptation, right? Nagumo explains that she gets faster every day, but the ghost always disappears before she can reach it. Hayashida implies they're at a stalemate, but Nagumo stares at him and says he seems pretty happy about the situation. That's when Nagumo warns that the static has appeared and yells for Mishiro to go through the window. Hayashida gets nervous. Mishiro shatters the glass window, saying the ghost won't expect this shortcut. Nagumo notices that she should have appeared on camera by now, but only the ghost is there. He turns to Hayashida and asks, "What is this?" And then, the reveal. Nagumo explains that Hayashida is the ghost. Chuck the guy asks how. Nagumo explains that he dressed up as a ghost beforehand, recorded the scenes, and was just playing back the original image before Mishiro arrived so they wouldn't discover the fake. Hayashida, desperate, asks for proof. Our boy Nagumo, totally calm, says that as soon as they looked at the camera, he was controlling the remote device in his pocket, and that was more than enough proof. Nagumo reveals he figured it all out on the first day when the old man's light was visible the moment the ghost disappeared. He just wanted to know the reason. And the reason is that Hayashida likes Mishiro and created this whole story to have an excuse to see her. Hayashida, defeated, admits everything, crying and asking for forgiveness. Nagumo advises him to stop messing around and just confess his feelings to her. At that exact moment, Mishiro walks in, and Nagumo says that Hayashida has something to tell her. But, to everyone's surprise, she's holding a real ghost. And both Nagumo and Hayashida nearly puke their souls out from sheer panic. The scene cuts to the office, where Mishiro can't find her pudding in the fridge. She goes to Nizu, who's sweating bullets, and asks if it was him. He denies it, all flustered, but suddenly hears on the news that Detective Nagumo has been arrested for stealing panties. Mishiro doesn't believe that nonsense. But it looks like our protag is busted, because his photo appears in the news report. At the police station, Chief Inspector Mimasaka, an old partner of Nagumo's, teases him. Nagumo, annoyed, says he's not the culprit. Mimasaka says he believes him, but he has evidence, an SD card with a recording. Our protag asks what an SD card is, and as the inspector tries to explain and put it in the computer, he breaks the card. Man, this anime is a trip. 10 minutes later, he shows a photo of Nagumo stealing the underwear. Nagumo, shocked, almost goes, "Damn, that really is me, huh boss?" Mimisaka says the case is closed, but Nagumo points out a flaw. The person in the photo is looking directly at the camera. Would a professional thief make a mistake like that? In other words, someone is trying to frame him. He says he'll get the proof with Mishiro's help. Meanwhile, we see Mishiro with a fishing rod with a pair of panties on the end. According to Nizu, this is Operation Catch the Panty Thief with a fishing rod. Nizu asks if this makes him a detective, and Mishiro, dead serious, says he still has 2 chances left. She shows a map with the locations of the thefts, and Nizu notices they're all around the office. She explains that the thief looks exactly like Nagumo and wants to frame him. Nizu smiles, seeing that she's acting like a real detective. Happy, she asks if he noticed anything strange about the map. He sees nothing. She then says that if you connect the dots, they form the Big Dipper asterism. Nizu, confused, says it looks more like Uzbekistan. Mishiro, ignoring all logic, says they need to arrest anyone wearing clothes with that constellation on them, which makes a total of 0 sense. She and Nizu then go to his place, where she hangs her underwear out to dry to lure the thief. Just then, Nizu greets our protag, but it wasn't him, it was the thief, which Mishiro obviously noticed. The thief runs, and Nizu tries to chase him but trips on a bug and falls. Mishiro, watching this, swears that all the men in the office are useless. She chases the thief, but he mocks her, saying a woman could never catch him. She bluffs, saying she'll use a drone bombardment to stop him. The thief stops, shocked, and she tackles him, yelling, "It's like I have a drone, you idiot." She takes him to the ground, but he cleverly manages to escape and even steals her panties. She vows to destroy him. At the police station, Mimisaka and Nagumo hear a commotion. Mishiro kicks the door open, apologizing for the delay and explaining that she caught the lookalike, but she beat him up so badly you can't even tell what he looks like anymore. The scene cuts to Mishiro yelling, "Stop right there, arsonist." She chases a running guy, pulls out a soccer ball, and kicks it at him. The ball misses, the guy mocks her, but then the ball suddenly hits him. Mishiro quotes, "The pen is mightier than the sword." Nagumo, out of patience, says the phrase has nothing to do with anything. At the police station, the arsonist laughs and says his art is outside, in parking lot number 1, and that they won't make it in time. Nagumo tells Mishiro to run over there. At the parking lot, she finds a box. Our protag, over the comms, tells her to wait for the bomb squad. The arsonist laughs, saying there's no time. Mishiro is forced to open the box and it's a bomb. The arsonist gets mad because Nagumo spoiled the surprise. The detective, annoyed, yells at Mishiro because she took a selfie with the bomb instead of a close-up picture. With 3 minutes left, Nagumo tells her to run, but she refuses, saying she'll defuse the bomb. Our old guy starts to panic. He grabs the arsonist, who says there's no way to defuse it. Mishiro says she saw how to do it in the movies, thinking that if she succeeds, she'll transcend, and if she fails, well, she'll transcend in a different way. She holds the bomb, sees a blue wire and a red wire, and says that success is always in cutting the red wire. An explosion sound is heard, but it wasn't the bomb, it was her, from being so scared. Now, there's just a tangled mass of wires. Nagumo tells her to run, but she refuses and decides to take the bomb far away. Mimisaka informs her there's an abandoned baseball field to the north. With 1 minute left, she runs but can't make it in time to place the bomb, so she kicks it into the field with all her might. Happy ending. Except not, because Nizu has proven he's an expert at being in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was just enjoying his photography hobby, and as he takes a picture of the bomb, it explodes. And we hear Mishiro ask, "Can you tell me how to get to the station?" Nagumo, once again, replies that the phrase has nothing to do with anything. The scene changes, and we see someone arriving at the investigation agency. He says it's finally time to pay his debt to Nagumo-sensei. Speaking of debt, the scene cuts, and we see Nagumo looking all nervous at a late payment notice, because our broke gentleman doesn't have the cash to pay. Mishiro overhears the trouble and, with the best intentions, offers to help, saying she can lend him some money. Nagumo, with a glimmer of hope, asks how much she has. Her answer? 500 yen in her piggy bank. And my friends, that's not even enough for a decent cup of coffee. Suddenly, the person we saw at the beginning of the episode appears behind Mishiro and asks if this is Nagumo's investigation office, startling our detective. Mishiro screams at him, accusing him of being a thief. The guy denies it. She asks how he got in if the door was locked, and he, all full of himself, says he has his own special skills for opening doors. Now Mishiro is sure he's a thief, and the two start arguing, while Nagumo feels like he's about to have a heart attack. The guy apologizes and introduces himself as Asunaro, a high school detective, explaining that when he sees a mystery, his nature compels him to investigate. Mishiro, pissed, explains to him that opening locks isn't a puzzle for him to solve. At that moment, Nagumo is starstruck and asks if he's really the great detective Asunaro from TV. He says Asunaro is the best young detective in the spotlight right now. The newcomer, however, says he's never reached Nagumo's level. Our protag then asks what brought him here. Nagumo notices Asunaro is distracted, and we find out he's thinking, "It's been 10 minutes and they haven't offered me coffee. What does this mean?" Meanwhile, we hear Nagumo ask where their hospitality is, and Mishiro serves him a coffee. Asunaro's internal analysis continues. Most hosts serve coffee with milk and sugar on the side. This coffee was served black, even though I didn't ask for it that way. What does this mean? Damn, this guy is paranoia personified. And Nagumo, for his part, just thinks to himself that this kid is a pain in the ass. After that, Asunaro explains he came for one reason. He asks Nagumo to hire him as his assistant. Nagumo is stunned. Mishiro gets angry, saying he already has an assistant. Nagumo asks why a famous detective like him would want to work for him. Asunaro replies that Nagumo is the reason he is who he is today. When he was a kid, he read articles about how a small detective outsmarted the big ones with his intelligence and rose to the top. He got into this business to be like Nagumo, and now that he's strong, he wants to repay the debt. Nagumo appreciates the sentiment but says he doesn't have the money to hire him. Asunaro surprises him by saying he'll work for free, explaining that his own work is going well, he's rich, and he intends to pay Nagumo tuition fees for his teachings. Nagumo is shocked. At that moment, Mishiro yells, demanding to be included in the conversation and asks if he shouldn't consult her first, since she's the first assistant. Here, Asunaro thinks and asks, a talking gorilla in clothes? Mishiro, furious, says this kid is getting on her nerves and that he has no logic, just barging in like that. Nagumo adds, and without any warning. Mishiro continues, saying that just wanting it isn't enough to be like that old man, referring to Nagumo. Asunaro asks if she thinks his admiration is all he has to offer, and says he can be more useful to Nagumo than she can. Mishiro, with her blood boiling, says she's ready to take him on. Asunaro accepts, but asks for another cup of coffee. We then see a girl, Kazumaki, Asunaro's assistant, saying she'll be the mediator for the event. She explains they'll compete in 3 basic detective skills: intelligence, deduction, and endurance. Whoever wins 2 rounds becomes Nagumo's assistant. Asunaro agrees instantly. Mishiro yells that it's not fair for Asunaro's assistant to set it all up. Kazumaki looks at her and says not to worry, because she hates Asunaro. We hear Asunaro say that's painful and that she's being harsh. She replies that she wants extra pay for that. He explains that she acts proud, but she's actually infatuated with him. Mishiro asks if that's true, and we see her holding her nose, while Asunaro tells her to stop it. Kazumaki announces that the first round is intelligence. Each gets a metal wire puzzle, and whoever solves it first wins. The competition begins. Kazumaki explains that Detective Asunaro is very fast. He laughs, saying he's close to solving it. But at that moment, he's shocked to see that Mishiro solved it before him by cutting the wire. Kazumaki announces that Mishiro won. one. Asunaro is outraged, asking how she can allow that. Kazumaki simply says the rule was whoever solves it first. He accuses her of cheating and refuses to accept it. And we hear the quote, people refuse to believe what they cannot understand. Pascal. Man, the crazy level of this anime is just, it's over 9,000. And with that, the victory goes to Mishiro. The second round is deduction. Kazumaki shows a coded message, and the first to figure out what's written wins. They both start thinking. Mishiro wonders if the first letter is English or if they're drawings. Asunaro, at that moment, says it's way too easy. The word is pi, with the numbers 3.14 and all that. Kazumaki apologizes and announces Asunaro's victory. Mishiro, angry, says it was too fast and accuses him of already knowing the answer. And we hear another quote, those who study 3, 4, or 5 times more than others are geniuses. Noguchi. And well, the score is now tied. Asunaro even provokes Mishiro, asking if she even knows the word pi. Kazumaki breaks up the fight and announces the final round, endurance. It's a stamp collection race. She's placed stamps in 3 locations in the park, and the first one back wins. Asunaro provokes Mishiro, saying he'll help her find her next job. With that, the starting pistol fires, and they crash into each other like sumo wrestlers. Meanwhile, Kazumaki is talking to Nagumo, saying that Asunaro admires him greatly and that his desire to see Nagumo regain his former glory is what brought him here. Nagumo jokes that Asunaro has strange taste, but says he reminds him of himself when he was young, and that, unlike him, Asunaro has support. While he has a cool assistant, Nagumo was all alone. Kazumaki smiles and says that Nagumo and Mishiro are a good duo and asks him not to fire Mishiro if Asunaro wins. Nagumo, confident, says that no one can beat Mishiro in endurance. And well, we're about to see why. Asunaro is in the lead and taunts her, saying she's about to lose. Mishiro feels the weight of her body, and if she loses, she can't stay with Nagumo. And then she just throws away everything that's weighing her down. With that, Asunaro and Kazumaki are shocked by the amount of stuff she was carrying. Nagumo explains it's her storage technique, and suddenly she takes off at a tremendous speed. In a flashback, her coach, yes, that one, tells her she trained well and that, of course, she can become a detective. And just like that, Mishiro wins the race. Asunaro admits defeat but says he'll take her place next time. Mishiro just replies, okay. He's confused, expecting a, you did well. She, on the other hand, just thinks he's a very annoying person. Asunaro calls for Kazumaki to leave, but Nagumo tells him she already left to pick up a package. And we see Asunaro running and yelling her name. Back at the office, Nagumo feels exhausted. Mishiro asks if he's okay with this, because if he had hired Asunaro, he would have gotten paid and had a better assistant. Nagumo interrupts her and asks, why did you become a sensitive adult? He says as long as she can make more money than Asunaro, there's no problem, and asks if she can do that. She looks at him and says yes. We're back at the office, and Nagumo is lamenting being broke. Mishiro says she can lend him some money, and out of nowhere, Asunaro appears behind her again, scaring her. He says he's here on business. As he's talking, Kazumaki interrupts and explains it's about the commotion last time, and that she brought a gift. Nagumo says there's no need, but Asunaro explains that he's actually here to hire Nagumo for a job, but nobody is paying attention. He asks Nagumo why he has work for him. Asunaro explains that a stalker is chasing him. He always feels like someone is watching him, and when he tries to catch them, they're too fast. Nagumo accepts the job, wanting a bit of excitement. On the street, Mishiro says that a triple tracking mission is fun, but Nagumo cuts her off, saying it's not a game. Kazumaki notices that Asunaro has stopped. He's staring at a person in glasses, who he thinks is the stalker. He starts his analysis. This person doesn't look like they exercise, so why are they wearing running headphones? What does this mean? Nagumo thinks this first impression is rude, and Kazumaki says he thinks he has to ask questions all the time. In another moment, he's analyzing a woman with cat supplies even though her husband has a dog face. Nagumo wonders if he has to put up with this the whole time. Suddenly, a group of fangirls surrounds Asunaro. Nagumo asks Mishiro if she noticed anything. Apparently, she didn't. He says he noticed someone has been following them the whole time. We see a person in a mask, and Mishiro says he's suspicious. Nagumo says yes, but it's not that person but the second one, another masked person. Nagumo tells Asunaro to calmly head to a location he'll direct him to. Asunaro walks, with a person behind him, and suddenly confronts him, saying he's trapped. The guy says it wasn't his intention. Asunaro says the worst stalkers don't realize what they're doing, and with that, the person runs. Nagumo appears in front of him and stops him. The stalker looks at him, runs again, and Nagumo bends his joint in a weird way, falls to the ground, and yells for Mishiro to catch him. She then appears in front of the stalker, who tricks her by making her look at a celebrity she admires, and escapes. Nagumo wonders how the stalker knew that. He then calls for Kazumaki to chase him, and she throws her cloak at him, finally catching him. Asunaro asks to see his face, and they're shocked to see it's Nizu. Mishiro asks, why you? He says he's not a stalker. She asks why he ran. He replies that they seemed really serious, so he got scared and ran. And then he points at Asunaro and says he's the stalker. Asunaro, surprised, asks who he's stalking. Nizu replies that he stalks Nagumo. He saw him more than once hanging around the agency for a month, and whenever Nagumo went out, he followed him. Kazumaki asks Asunaro what this means. He gets all embarrassed and says it's a mistake, that he was observing Nagumo to wait for the right moment to introduce himself, that he needed to learn his life patterns, and asks who calls this stalking. They all answer in unison, we call that stalking. Kazumaki gets furious, and Asunaro, scared of her, runs off. Mishiro asks Nizu to chase him, while Nagumo reflects, the worst stalkers don't realize what they're doing, remembering Asunaro's own words. And that's where the episode ends. This anime has been hilarious to follow. I hope you guys are enjoying it too. And if you are, let me know in the comments that you want the next part, smash that like and hype button to support the video, and subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss any new updates.